when my own daughter looked me straight in the eye and said, "Find somewhere else to rot, you worthless old woman," I never imagined that 3 days later she'd be the one begging for mercy. What she didn't know was that her father had been playing a chess game for years, and I was about to become the queen who'd checkmate her completely. My name is Catherine Miller, and this is the story of how I went from being a discarded widow to the woman who held all the power. Trust me, this tale has more unexpected turns than a mountain road. And by the end, you'll understand why karma sometimes takes her sweet time but always delivers with interest. Just 2 months ago, I was living what I thought was a simple life as the devoted wife of 44 years to Robert Miller, a successful businessman and mother to my daughter Sarah. When Robert passed away suddenly from a stroke at 72, I believed my world had crumbled completely. Sarah appeared during my darkest hours of grief like a concerned angel, speaking softly about how overwhelming everything must feel for me. "Mother, you simply cannot manage this enormous house by yourself," she cooed with what I now realize was perfectly rehearsed sympathy. "The upkeep, the isolation, all these painful memories everywhere you look. It's destroying your mental health." I should have recognized the calculating gleam behind her concerned expression, but grief has a way of making you blind to manipulation. Sarah had always been Robert's treasured princess, the golden child who could never make a mistake in his eyes. When she married that ambitious lawyer, Thomas, and began producing his precious grandchildren, Robert showered them all with attention and gifts. Meanwhile, I remained the invisible woman who handled the cooking, cleaning, and endless household management that kept our lives running smoothly. Following the funeral, Sarah became increasingly aggressive about my living situation. She'd arrive with Thomas for what she called family consultations, armed with glossy brochures for senior communities and real estate market analyses. "Mother, these facilities are absolutely wonderful," she'd insist, spreading pamphlets across my kitchen table. "You'd have companions your age, organized activities, zero responsibilities or stress." What they really meant was zero inheritance to complicate their plans, and zero inconvenient mother figure to manage. The devastating blow finally came on a Tuesday evening that changed everything. I'd been existing in what Sarah had begun calling our family home for 7 weeks since Robert's death, still unable to sleep in the master bedroom we'd shared, instead curled up in the guest room like a visitor in my own house. Sarah burst through the front door without knocking, followed by Thomas and several large moving boxes. "Mother, we've reached a final decision," she announced with the authority of someone delivering a corporate memo. "Thomas received the senior partnership offer, and we need to relocate into the city immediately. This house is absolutely perfect for our expanding family." I stared at her in complete bewilderment. "Relocate into the city? But Sarah, this is my home, where I've lived for decades." Sarah's mask of artificial concern slipped away, revealing the cold calculation that had been hiding underneath all along. "Actually, Mother, according to Father's legal will, I inherited absolutely everything. The house, all investments, every single asset. I've been allowing you to remain here purely out of kindness, but that arrangement ends now." The word struck me like a physical attack. "Sarah, surely there's been some terrible mistake in the paperwork." "No mistake whatsoever. Father knew I'd manage his legacy far better than you ever could. You never understood finances, investments, or business matters. You were simply the housewife. Simply the housewife. For decades of marriage, sacrifice, and devotion reduced to those dismissive words." Then she delivered what she clearly intended as the finishing blow. "Find somewhere else to rot, you worthless old woman." I packed my entire existence into 2 battered suitcases and a small cardboard box of photographs. Sarah observed from the doorway, tapping her expensive watch impatiently like I was making her late for something important. "There's a decent senior housing complex on Pine Street," she offered with the enthusiasm of someone recommending a mediocre restaurant. "Very reasonably priced. I'm certain they have immediate openings." Reasonably priced. My daughter was inheriting $35 million, and she was directing me toward what amounted to a government-subsidized facility for destitute elderly people. Thomas loaded my meager belongings into their luxury sedan, with the efficiency of someone disposing of unwanted garbage. "Catherine, you're going to absolutely love having your independence back," he said, avoiding direct eye contact. No more concerns about property maintenance or tax obligations. No more home, he actually meant. As we drove away from the house where I'd spent 4 decades creating memories, hosting Sarah's birthday celebrations, caring for Robert through his various illnesses, and maintaining every detail he valued, I watched it disappear in the side mirror. The irony felt crushing. I'd devoted my life to making that house a warm home, and now I was being transported to a budget motel like an unwanted houseguest who'd finally outstayed her welcome. The sun set and lived up to every expectation you'd have of a place charging $59 per night. Paper-thin walls, towels that had seen better years, and carpeting that bore the stains of countless temporary residents. Sarah handed me $300 in cash like she was tipping a hotel housekeeper. "This should cover your expenses for several days while you get properly settled," she said. "I'll have Thomas arrange a money transfer into your account once we finish organizing Father's paperwork." "Some money from my own inheritance," she'd said. After they departed, I collapsed onto the sagging mattress and tried to process the complete transformation my life had undergone. In less than 4 hours, I'd gone from grieving widow to homeless senior citizen. The daughter I'd raised, loved, and sacrificed everything for had discarded me like an expired medication bottle. But as I sat there in that depressing motel room, something began bothering me deeply. Robert had always been incredibly meticulous about his business affairs, obsessively organized about every important document and legal matter. He'd shown me the will several years ago, carefully explaining his intentions, making absolutely certain I understood every provision, and I was completely sure that's not what it had contained. Robert had been many things traditional in his thinking, sometimes stubborn about decisions, occasionally condescending when discussing financial matters with me. But he wasn't cruel or heartless. The man who'd held my hand through my father's terminal illness, who'd surprised me with flowers every single anniversary, wouldn't have left me completely destitute and homeless in my old age. The following morning, I used the motel's unreliable internet connection to locate Robert's longtime attorney, William Sterling, the same lawyer who'd handled our house purchase and various legal matters throughout our marriage. His office was located downtown, a 30-minute bus ride that cost me precious cash from my dwindling supply, but felt absolutely necessary. William Sterling was a distinguished gentleman in his 70s with gentle eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. When his secretary announced that Mrs. Miller was there regarding her husband's estate, he looked genuinely surprised and concerned. "Catherine, my dear woman, I was wondering when you'd come to see me. I attempted calling your house numerous times, but Sarah informed me you were traveling extensively." "Traveling extensively?" That's the story my daughter had fabricated. "Mr. Sterling, I need to ask you directly about Robert's will." He appeared puzzled by my question. "Of course, naturally. Didn't Sarah provide you with your personal copy?" I gave her the original document and several copies immediately after the formal reading. My stomach dropped like a stone. There was a formal reading? "Catherine, you were supposed to be present for that. Sarah explained that you were too emotionally distraught, that she'd handle all the arrangements and ensure you received your inheritance properly." The blood drained completely from my face as the horrible reality became clear. "Mr. Sterling, I was never informed about any reading. Sarah told me she inherited absolutely everything." William Sterling's expression shifted from confusion to alarm. He reached for a thick legal folder, his movements suddenly urgent and purposeful. "Catherine, that's completely impossible. Your husband's will is extremely specific about your inheritance." He extracted a document. I recognized Robert's careful signature at the bottom, properly witnessed and notarized. But as William began reading aloud, I realized Sarah had lied about absolutely everything. "I, Robert James Miller, being of sound mind and body, do hereby bequeath to my beloved wife Catherine Rose Miller the following: our primary residence at 1247 Maple Drive, including all furnishings and personal effects. Additionally, I leave her 75% of all financial assets, investments, and accounts, totaling approximately $26 million. My head began spinning violently. $26 million. The house. 75% of everything. William continued reading, his voice growing more serious. To my daughter, Sarah Miller Thompson, I leave $9 million to be held in a restricted trust with distributions beginning on her 50th birthday, contingent upon her respectful treatment of her mother following my death. Contingent upon her respectful treatment of me. Robert had somehow known exactly what Sarah would attempt to do. Mr. Sterling, I whispered. Sarah told me I inherited nothing. She moved into my house. She gave me $300 and suggested I find a government facility. The elderly attorney's face flushed with indignation. Catherine, what Sarah has done constitutes elder abuse and multiple felonies. She's committed fraud, but she showed me official-looking legal documents. Forged documents most likely, or papers from an earlier draft. Your husband updated his will 8 months before his death specifically because he'd become concerned about Sarah's entitled attitude and her treatment of you. The room felt like it was rotating. All those times Sarah had interrupted me during family conversations, dismissed my opinions at dinner gatherings, rolled her eyes when I tried contributing to discussions about their expensive vacations or Thomas's business achievements. Robert had been observing, evaluating, making crucial decisions. There's additional information, Catherine. The trust provision for Sarah specifically states that if she fails to treat you with dignity and respect following my death, her entire $9 million inheritance reverts to you instead. I stared at him in complete shock. Are you telling me? I'm telling you that your daughter just cost herself $9 million. Her inheritance now belongs to you as well. You're not inheriting $26 million, Catherine. You're inheriting $35 million, plus the house and all personal property. The irony was so perfect it was almost laughable. Sarah had been so desperate to claim her inheritance that she triggered the exact protective clause designed to shield me from her greed. What do I do now? I asked, my voice barely steady. William smiled, and for the first time since Robert's death, I witnessed genuine warmth directed toward me. Now, my dear, we contact the police about the fraud. And then we call Sarah to inform her that she's about to experience the shock of her lifetime. Can she legally fight this? With what resources? She's about to discover that every account she believed she controlled actually belongs to you. Every investment, every bank account, every asset except your house will be frozen pending investigation of her fraudulent activities. I thought about Sarah in my house, probably already planning expensive renovations, shopping for luxury furniture with money she assumed was hers. Thomas was likely calculating how the inheritance would enhance his investment portfolio. They had absolutely no idea that in approximately 6 hours, their entire world was going to collapse completely. William Sterling's office became command headquarters for what he cheerfully dubbed Operation Justice. He contacted the police, all the banks, and a private investigator while I sat in his leather chair, still processing the enormous scope of Sarah's deception. The forged documents are quite sophisticated, Detective Martinez explained as she examined the fake will Sarah had shown me. This wasn't a spontaneous crime. Someone planned this very carefully. You believe Sarah had assistance? Yes, almost certainly. Creating convincing legal forgeries requires specialized knowledge and professional connections. We'll need to investigate whether Thomas or someone in his law firm network was involved. Within 3 hours, every account had been completely frozen. Sarah's credit cards linked to what she believed were her new inheritance accounts were declined at every transaction. The house utilities, which she'd already transferred to her name, were suspended pending ownership verification. My phone rang at exactly 4:23 p.m. Sarah's name appeared on the screen. Mother, where are you? There's some kind of banking error with Father's assets. They're claiming all the accounts are frozen. Hello, Sarah. I'm sitting in William Sterling's office. You remember him, don't you? Father's attorney, the one who read the real will to an empty room while you told him I was traveling abroad. Silence. Then, Mother, I don't know what you think you've discovered, but I discovered that you're a liar and a thief, sweetheart. I also discovered that your father was much more intelligent than either of us realized. You don't understand. I was protecting you from the complexity of managing such large amounts of money. You've never had to deal with investments or I understand perfectly. You forged legal documents, committed multiple felonies, and threw your 70-year-old mother out of her own house because you assumed I was too stupid to notice. Her voice turned sharp and desperate. Mother, you're confused. The grief has been overwhelming, and someone is obviously taking advantage of your emotional vulnerability. The audacity was breathtaking. Even caught completely red-handed, Sarah was attempting to manipulate me. Sarah dear, let me clarify something for you. Not only did you never inherit anything, but your actual inheritance, the $9 million your father left you, is now mine as well, thanks to a protective clause he included about treating me with dignity and respect. That's impossible. Detective Martinez is sitting right here if you'd like to discuss the impossibility of fraud charges with her. The phone went completely quiet. I could practically hear Sarah's mind racing, calculating, desperately searching for an escape route. Mother, please, can we meet somewhere and discuss this reasonably? I'm sure we can work something out. Oh, we'll definitely be meeting soon at the courthouse when you're arraigned. You wouldn't dare press charges against your own daughter. Something cold and final crystallized in my chest. Watch me. I hung up and looked at William, who was beaming with approval. How long before she's arrested? Detective Martinez answered. We have enough evidence for warrants. They'll arrest her this evening. And Thomas, his financial records are being subpoenaed. If he participated in creating those documents, he'll face charges too. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Mother, please don't do this. Think about the grandchildren. I showed the message to Detective Martinez, who smiled grimly. Classic emotional manipulation. Standard behavior pattern for this type of crime. I typed back. I am thinking about them. They deserve to learn what happens when you steal from family. 25 minutes later, Thomas called. Catherine, surely we can resolve this privately. Sarah made some questionable decisions, but involving law enforcement seems excessive. Thomas, did you help her forge those documents? That's not Catherine. You have to understand the pressure Sarah was under. She was genuinely worried about your mental state, your ability to handle such large sums of money. So that's a yes. It wasn't malicious. She truly believed she was protecting you by throwing me out of my house and telling me to find somewhere to rot. Thomas was quiet. Thomas, here's what's going to happen. You're both going to be arrested. You're both going to face federal fraud charges. And I'm going to be sitting in my house watching it all unfold. Catherine, please be reasonable. I was reasonable for 44 years. It didn't work out particularly well for me. The police arrested Sarah at 9:15 p.m. while she was having dinner at Romano's, apparently celebrating her inheritance with Thomas and another couple. According to Detective Martinez, she screamed about false arrest and demanded to call her attorney, who turned out to be Thomas's golf partner with no criminal law experience whatsoever. Thomas was arrested at his law office the following morning. The forensic accountant had traced the forged documents to a printing company Thomas's firm used for creating fraudulent legal prospectuses. Apparently, my son-in-law had quite the criminal background that Sarah either didn't know about or chose to ignore. I spent my first night back in my house sleeping in the master bedroom for the first time in over 2 months. Sarah had already moved her belongings into the space, replacing Robert's careful organization with her chaos of designer clothing and expensive cosmetics. I packed everything into garbage bags and left them on the front porch for her to collect when she made bail. The house felt fundamentally different now. Not because Robert was gone, but because I was finally seeing it as truly mine. For decades, I'd maintained it as Robert's sanctuary, designed around his preferences, his needs, his vision of how we should live. Now, looking around with clear eyes, I realized how little of my personality had ever been reflected in these rooms. That was about to change dramatically. William called around midday with updates. Sarah's bail is set at $75,000. Since all her accounts are frozen, she'll have to find someone else to cover it. What about Thomas? $250,000. Apparently, the judge wasn't impressed with his history of financial crimes. I certainly hadn't known about that background, but then again, I'd been excluded from most family financial discussions. Sarah and Thomas had always spoken to me like I was a child when money topics arose, simplifying concepts they assumed I couldn't understand. They were about to learn exactly how much I'd actually understood all along. William, I want to make some significant changes to the house. Sarah had contractors scheduled to renovate. I'd like to proceed with some of those plans, but with my own vision. Excellent idea. It's your home now, Catherine. Do whatever makes you happy. What made me happy was the idea of undoing every assumption Sarah had made about my inheritance. She'd planned to gut the kitchen, replace the original hardwood floors, and convert Robert's study into a wine cellar. I was going to transform the study into an art studio and turn the wine cellar plans into a library. My phone rang. Unknown number. Mrs. Miller, this is Jennifer Hayes from Channel 9 News. We understand you're the victim of a significant elder fraud case involving your daughter. Would you be willing to share your story? Word was spreading quickly. In a city this size, the arrest of a prominent attorney and his wife for defrauding his elderly mother-in-law was definitely news. Miss Hayes, I appreciate your interest, but I'm not ready to make public statements yet. I understand this must be incredibly difficult, but your story could help other seniors recognize warning signs of family financial abuse. She had an excellent point. How many other women my age were being manipulated by adult children who saw them as inconvenient obstacles to inheritance? If I decided to tell my story, would I have control over how it's presented? Absolutely. We could arrange a comprehensive interview where you'd have approval over the final edit. I thought about Sarah, probably sitting in a jail cell right now, still believing this was all a misunderstanding she could charm her way out of. Miss Hayes, let me get back to you. I might have quite a story to tell. After hanging up, I poured myself a glass of the expensive wine Thomas had sent us for Christmas, wine I was apparently now drinking in my own house, purchased with my own money, while contemplating whether to publicly humiliate my daughter on television. Life had certainly taken an interesting turn. The doorbell rang at 7:30 a.m. sharp. Through the window, I could see Sarah on my front porch wearing yesterday's clothes and looking like she'd aged 10 years overnight. She'd somehow made bail. I opened the door but didn't invite her inside. Mother, please. We need to talk. We talked yesterday. You told me to find somewhere to rot. I found somewhere to live instead. Sarah's eyes were red-rimmed, her usual perfect composure completely shattered. I made mistakes. Terrible, unforgivable mistakes. But I'm still your daughter. Are you? Because daughters don't typically forge legal documents to steal their mother's inheritance. I wasn't stealing. She stopped, clearly struggling to find words that didn't sound criminal. You were what, Sarah? I was trying to protect you from making poor financial decisions. You've never managed large amounts of money. Even now, even after being arrested for fraud, she couldn't admit the truth. In Sarah's mind, she was still the victim of my unreasonable expectations. Sarah, let me share something your father told me 8 months before he died. He said he was worried about your sense of entitlement, your attitude toward money, and how you treated people you considered beneath you. Her face went completely pale. Father never said that. He said you reminded him of his sister, Elizabeth, beautiful, charming, and completely incapable of thinking about anyone but yourself. He told me he was changing the will specifically because he was afraid of what you'd do to me if you had control. That's a lie. I pulled out my phone and showed her a video recording. Actually, it's not. Your father recorded a video message explaining his decision, to be played if you ever contested the will or treated me poorly after his death. Sarah stared at the phone like it contained a venomous snake. He knew, sweetheart. He knew exactly who you were underneath all that charm. The only thing he didn't predict was how far you'd actually go. Play it, she whispered. I touched the screen and Robert's voice filled the morning air. Clear, measured, and absolutely devastating. If you're hearing this, Sarah, it means my fears about your character were justified. I hoped I was wrong. I prayed that my daughter had more integrity than I suspected. But if Catherine is playing this recording, it means you've proven me right in the worst possible way. Sarah sank onto the porch steps as Robert's voice continued. I spent 44 years watching your mother sacrifice her dreams, her ambitions, her independence to take care of our family. She worked multiple part-time jobs to help pay for your college while I built my business. She postponed her own education, gave up career opportunities, and poured herself into being the wife and mother she thought we needed. The recording continued for 4 more minutes. Each word carefully chosen, each sentence a precise cut through Sarah's justifications and self-deceptions. By the time you hear this, you'll have discovered that treating your mother poorly has cost you everything. I hope it was worth it. When it ended, Sarah was sobbing. Not the pretty tears she'd used to manipulate people since childhood, but ugly, broken sobs. He hated me, she whispered. No, Sarah. He loved you enough to hope you'd prove him wrong. You chose to prove him right instead. She looked up at me, mascara streaking her cheeks. What happens now? Now you face the consequences of your choices. The fraud charges, the investigation, the public humiliation. When this story hits the news, Channel 9 wants to interview me about elder financial abuse. I'm thinking of saying yes. Sarah's face crumpled completely. Mother, please think about what this will do to the grandchildren, to Thomas's career, to our entire family. I am thinking about it. I'm thinking about how you didn't consider any of those things when you decided to commit multiple felonies. She stood up slowly, looking older and more defeated than I'd ever seen her. I know you won't believe this, but I never meant for it to go this far. I wanted the money. I wanted the security, the status. I wanted to never have to worry about anything again. For the first time since this nightmare began, Sarah was telling the absolute truth. I believe you, sweetheart. But wanting something doesn't justify destroying people to get it. She nodded, tears still flowing. What can I do to fix this? You can start by admitting what you did was wrong. Not misguided, not protective, not complicated. Wrong. It was wrong. It was completely, unforgivably wrong. And then you can face whatever consequences come next with some dignity, instead of trying to manipulate your way out of them. Sarah looked at me for a long moment, seeing perhaps for the first time not the pushover mother she'd always known, but the woman who had just outmaneuvered her completely. I deserved this, didn't I? Yes, Sarah. You absolutely did. 4 days after Sarah's porch confession, Thomas's mother appeared at my door. Victoria Thompson was everything I'd expected, perfectly coiffed, dripping with jewelry, and radiating the kind of entitlement that only comes from 3 generations of inherited wealth. Catherine, we need to discuss this situation like rational adults. I invited her in, curious to see what version of reality the Thompson family had constructed to explain their son's felony charges. Victoria settled herself in my living room like she was granting me an audience. Thomas made some questionable choices, obviously, but prosecuting him seems rather vindictive, don't you think? Vindictive? Your son helped steal my inheritance and threw me out of my own house. Thomas was following Sarah's lead. He didn't understand the complete situation. The woman was actually trying to blame my daughter for her son's criminal behavior. I had to admire the audacity. Mrs. Thompson, Thomas created forged legal documents. That's not following someone's lead. That's conspiracy to commit fraud. Thomas's attorney believes we can reach a settlement that benefits everyone. You get your house back, Sarah faces appropriate consequences, and Thomas avoids the publicity of a trial. Appropriate consequences, as if Sarah's crimes were a minor etiquette violation. What kind of settlement? Victoria smiled, clearly believing she'd found an opening. Thomas's family is prepared to compensate you for your inconvenience. Let's say $3 million in exchange for dropping the charges against Thomas. $3 million to forgive the man who'd helped steal $35 million from me. Mrs. Thompson, your son participated in a scheme that cost me everything I owned. You think $3 million covers that? Catherine, be realistic. Thomas has a career, children, a reputation to maintain. Sending him to prison serves no one. It serves justice. Victoria's polished facade cracks slightly. Justice? You're destroying multiple families over money you never would have known how to manage anyway. There it was, the same condescending attitude that had poisoned my relationship with Sarah. In their world, I was just the help who'd gotten uppity. Mrs. Thompson, I think we're finished here. Catherine, please reconsider. $7 million. Final offer. $7 million to let Thomas walk free. The amount was staggering, but the principle was non-negotiable. My answer is no. Victoria stood, her composure completely restored. Very well. But you should know that Thomas's legal team has found some interesting information about your husband's business practices. It would be unfortunate if that became public during the trial. The threat was clear, but I felt no fear, only curiosity. What kind of information? The kind that might make you reconsider who the real criminal in this situation was. After she left, I called William immediately. Catherine, whatever they think they found, it doesn't change the facts of Sarah and Thomas's crimes. But could it affect the case? Potentially, if they can muddy the waters enough, create doubt about Robert's character or business practices, it might influence a jury. I thought about Robert, about our marriage, about all the secrets that might be buried in 44 years of shared life. William, I want to know everything about Robert's business. Every deal, every partnership, every potential irregularity. Catherine, are you sure? Sometimes the past is better left undisturbed. The Thompson family is threatening to drag Robert's memory through the mud to protect their criminal son. I'd rather know the truth first. That evening, I sat in Robert's study, my study now, and began going through his files systematically. Robert had been meticulously organized, every document dated and categorized. But as I dug deeper into his business records, I began finding things that didn't quite make sense. Payments to shell companies, consulting fees that seemed excessive, partnerships with firms that appeared to exist only on paper. By 2 a.m., I discovered something that changed everything I thought I knew about my husband. The private investigator William recommended was a sharp-eyed woman named Maria Santos, who specialized in financial crimes. She spent 8 hours in Robert's study, photographing documents and building what she called the real picture of my husband's business empire. Mrs. Miller, your husband was running a sophisticated money laundering operation through his consulting firm. We're talking about millions of dollars in illegal transactions over the past 15 years. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. That's impossible. Robert was the most honest man I knew. I'm sorry, but the evidence is overwhelming. He was washing money for organized crime families, using his legitimate business as a front. I stared at the documents spread across Robert's desk. Invoices for services never rendered, consulting contracts with companies that didn't exist, payment schedules that corresponded with known criminal activities. How long has this been going on? Based on these records, at least 15 years, probably longer. 15 years. While I was planning charity events and attending book clubs, my husband was facilitating criminal enterprises. Mrs. Miller, there's more. The $9 million Robert left Sarah, that money came directly from laundered funds. If the FBI discovers this, they'll seize everything as proceeds of criminal activity. The room started spinning. Everything. The house, the investments, all of it. Unless Sarah and Thomas's legal team already knows about this and is planning to use it as leverage. If they tip off the FBI about your husband's crimes, they might be able to negotiate immunity in exchange for cooperation. My daughter and her husband weren't just thieves, they were holding a nuclear weapon over my head. What are my options? Legally, you could contact the FBI yourself, come forward voluntarily, and hope for leniency. You'd lose most of the money, but you might keep the house. And if I don't? Sarah and Thomas's lawyers will probably leak this information strategically. You'll lose everything anyway. But you'll also face potential charges for unknowingly benefiting from criminal activity. I thought about Victoria Thompson's smug confidence, her certainty that I'd accept their settlement offer. They'd known about Robert's crimes all along. Maria, how did they find out about this? Thomas is an attorney specializing in financial crimes. He would have recognized the patterns in your husband's financial records. The question is, what are they planning to do with this information? My phone rang. Sarah's number. Mother, we need to meet tonight. There are things you need to know about Father that change everything. I already know, Sarah. Silence. Then you know we need to renegotiate our situation. What kind of renegotiation? Thomas gets immunity in exchange for providing information about father's criminal network. You get to keep $7 million in the house. The rest goes to the government. And the fraud charges disappear. We all walk away from this mess. It was brilliant in a sociopathic way. Sarah had turned my moral victory into her strategic advantage. Sarah, you're asking me to help you profit from your crimes by exploiting father's crimes. I'm asking you to be practical. The alternative is losing everything and potentially facing charges yourself. I looked around Robert's study, seeing it clearly for the first time. The expensive furniture, the rare books, the art collection, all of it purchased with blood money. I need time to think. Mother, the FBI meeting is tomorrow morning. Thomas's attorney needs an answer tonight. After hanging up, I sat in the darkness of Robert's study, surrounded by evidence of his double life. 44 years of marriage to a stranger. A daughter who'd inherited more than money from her father. She'd inherited his talent for deception. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated who I was when my back was against the wall. I picked up the phone and dialed Maria Santos. Maria, how quickly can you get me a meeting with the FBI? I have a story to tell them, and I think they're going to find it very interesting. FBI agent Nicole Rodriguez looked exactly like Central Casting would order for a federal investigator. Serious, intelligent, and completely immune to charm. She sat across from me in William's conference room, recording our conversation and taking notes with mechanical precision. Mrs. Miller, you understand that by coming forward voluntarily, you're potentially admitting to benefiting from criminal proceeds? I understand, but I'd rather tell you the truth than let my daughter and her husband manipulate this situation to their advantage. I laid out everything. Robert's hidden business, Sarah's fraud scheme, Thomas's forgeries, the extortion attempt masquerading as a settlement offer. You believe she can trade information about your husband's crimes for immunity from her own charges. That's exactly what she believes. And she thinks I'll cooperate because I'm afraid of losing everything. Agent Rodriguez smiled for the first time. Are you afraid, Mrs. Miller? Agent Rodriguez, 2 weeks ago I was a grieving widow sleeping in a budget motel. Today I'm sitting here voluntarily confessing to federal agents about my dead husband's criminal enterprise. Fear is no longer my primary emotion. What is? Anger. Pure, crystallized anger at being manipulated by people who underestimated my intelligence for decades. Agent Rodriguez's smile widened. Mrs. Miller, would you be willing to wear a wire? For hours later, I was sitting in my living room with a recording device taped to my chest, waiting for Sarah and Thomas to arrive for what they thought was a surrender meeting. They knocked at exactly 8:30 p.m., both dressed like they were attending a business dinner. Thomas carried a briefcase that probably contained immunity agreements and settlement papers. Mother, you look better than you have in weeks, Sarah said, kissing my cheek like nothing had happened. I feel better. Clarity has that effect. Thomas opened his briefcase with the efficiency of someone who'd conducted similar negotiations before. Catherine, our attorneys have structured this very favorably for you. You retain the house, $7 million in clean assets, and complete immunity from any charges related to Robert's activities. Clean assets. That's an interesting phrase. Sarah shot Thomas a warning look. Mother, the important thing is that we're all protected. The past stays buried and we all move forward. What about the $35 million Robert actually left me? Mother, that money is tainted. It can't be separated from father's criminal activities. Taking $7 million is the best outcome possible. And you too? What do you get out of this arrangement? Thomas leaned forward, his confidence returning. We get to put this unfortunate misunderstanding behind us. Sarah's charges disappear, my reputation remains intact, and our family can heal. Misunderstanding. He was still calling felony fraud a misunderstanding. Thomas, help me understand something. When exactly did you discover Robert's criminal activities? What do you mean? I mean, did you know about the money laundering when you married Sarah? Or did you discover it recently when you were planning to steal my inheritance? Thomas and Sarah exchanged worried glances. Catherine, I don't think that's relevant to our current discussion. Actually, I think it's very relevant. Because if you knew about Robert's crimes and said nothing, that makes you an accessory after the fact. And if you only discovered them while committing your own crimes, that makes you remarkably unlucky. Sarah's composure was starting to crack. Mother, what are you getting at? I'm getting at the fact that you two have been planning this for months, possibly years. The forged will, the money laundering discovery, even Thomas's connections to document forgers. None of this was spontaneous. That's ridiculous. Is it? Agent Rodriguez finds it quite plausible. The color drained from both their faces. Agent Rodriguez? Thomas whispered. FBI. She's been very interested in my story about systematic elder abuse, fraud, and extortion. Particularly the part where you tried to blackmail me with my dead husband's crimes. Thomas stood up abruptly, reaching for his briefcase. Catherine, this conversation is over. Actually, Thomas, I think it's just beginning. Agent Rodriguez and two other federal agents entered my living room as Sarah and Thomas sat frozen in place. The briefcase Thomas had been reaching for was confiscated immediately, along with both their phones. Sarah Miller Thompson and Thomas Thompson, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, elder abuse, and attempted extortion of a federal witness. Sarah turned to me with an expression of absolute betrayal. Mother, how could you do this to your own family? The same way you could forge legal documents and steal my inheritance, sweetheart. Except my way is legal. As the agents handcuffed them, Thomas tried one last desperate play. Catherine, you don't understand what you've done. There are people connected to Robert's business who won't appreciate federal attention. You've put yourself in danger. Agent Rodriguez paused in reading them their rights. Mr. Thompson, are you threatening a federal witness? I'm warning her about the reality of her situation. The reality is that you just added witness intimidation to your charges. After they were removed, Agent Rodriguez sat back down across from me. Mrs. Miller, Thomas's warning might not be entirely empty. Your husband was connected to some dangerous people. How dangerous? The Moretti crime family primarily. They've been using legitimate businesses to launder money for decades. Your husband's consulting firm was one of their most successful operations. The name meant nothing to me, but the agent's expression told me everything I needed to know. Are you saying I'm in actual physical danger? Potentially. But there's something else you should know about your husband's operation. Something that changes everything. Agent Rodriguez pulled out a thick file folder, the kind that suggested months of investigation. Mrs. Miller, your husband wasn't just laundering money for the Moretti family. He was an FBI informant. The world tilted sideways. What? Deep cover long-term investigation. The operation was so sensitive that even local FBI offices weren't informed. Your husband was helping us build cases against multiple crime families. But the money was real. The FBI allowed him to keep a percentage of the laundered funds as payment for his cooperation and to maintain his cover. Everything he left you was earned through legitimate federal cooperation. I stared at her, trying to process this revelation. So the $35 million is legally mine? Your husband died before the investigation concluded, but his cooperation over 15 years directly led to 63 arrests and the seizure of over $300 million in criminal assets. Why didn't anyone tell me? Because the investigation was ongoing, and because we weren't certain about your involvement or knowledge. Your daughter and son-in-law's fraud scheme actually helped us confirm your innocence. Sarah and Thomas didn't know any of this? They suspected criminal activity, but they had no idea about the federal cooperation. They were planning to blackmail you with information that would have actually exonerated your husband. The irony was so perfect it was almost poetic. Sarah had tried to steal my inheritance twice, once through fraud, and once through blackmail based on incomplete information. Agent Rodriguez, what happens now? Now you get your money back. Your daughter and son-in-law face federal charges, and you get to decide what kind of life you want to build with your legitimate inheritance. And the danger Thomas mentioned? The Moretti family will be too busy dealing with their own legal problems to worry about you. We're executing search warrants across 5 states tomorrow morning. I looked around my living room, seeing it again as the site of my resurrection rather than my humiliation. Agent Rodriguez, can I ask you something? Of course. In your professional opinion, am I a terrible person for feeling satisfaction about Sarah's arrest? Agent Rodriguez smiled. Mrs. Miller, in my professional opinion, you're a woman who refused to be victimized. That's not terrible. That's inspiring. 8 months later, I stood in the kitchen of my completely renovated house, making coffee for 2. The morning sun streamed through new windows that actually opened properly, illuminating countertops I'd chosen myself for the first time in 44 years. Good morning, Catherine. Dr. Amanda Santos, Maria's sister and my new financial advisor, appeared in the doorway carrying a thick folder of investment reports. Good morning, Amanda. Ready for our quarterly review? The past 8 months had been a whirlwind of legal proceedings, media interviews, and personal transformation. Sarah and Thomas were each serving 24-month federal sentences. The news coverage of their crimes had made me something of a celebrity in senior advocacy circles. Your portfolio is performing excellently, Amanda said, settling at my new breakfast table. The charitable foundation is fully operational, and the scholarship fund has already selected its first recipients. The Catherine Miller Foundation for Elder Protection had become my primary focus. Using $18 million of my inheritance, we were funding legal aid for seniors facing family financial abuse and supporting legislative changes to strengthen elder protection laws. Any word on the documentary? Netflix confirmed the production deal. They want to start filming next month. My story had captured media attention far beyond the initial news coverage. The Widow's Justice, an American crime story, was being developed as a limited series, with proceeds going to elder advocacy organizations. And Sarah. Amanda's expression grew careful. She's written again. Her attorney says she wants to apologize and ask for forgiveness. Sarah had written me 23 letters from federal prison. I'd read the first few, which ranged from self-justifying to desperate, before deciding to stop opening them. Some relationships, once broken, can't be repaired with words. Has my stance on that changed? Not according to our previous conversations, but people do evolve, Catherine. Even people who've made terrible choices. I thought about the woman I'd been 8 months ago, grieving, dependent, willing to accept whatever scraps of dignity my family offered me. That woman might have felt obligated to forgive Sarah, to rebuild a relationship based on guilt and tradition. But that woman was gone. Amanda, schedule a meeting with Sarah's attorney. Not to reconcile, but to make something clear. What kind of thing? I want Sarah to understand that her actions had consequences beyond legal punishment. I want her to know that she destroyed our relationship permanently, and that her children will grow up knowing why their mother went to prison. That seems harsh. Good. Supposed to be harsh. Sarah made adult choices that hurt people she was supposed to love. She doesn't get to escape the emotional consequences just because she's written some prison letters. Amanda made notes in her leather portfolio. And the grandchildren? Sarah's requested supervised visits with them. My relationship with Sarah's children will be based on their choices when they're adults, not their mother's rehabilitation efforts. The doorbell rang. Through the window, I could see a delivery truck with a large package. Must be the new furniture for the studio, I told Amanda. The art studio had been my favorite renovation project. Robert's former den was now a bright, airy space where I was rediscovering my love of painting, something I'd abandoned when I got married and assumed the role of supporting wife and mother. Catherine, can I ask you something personal? Of course. Do you ever regret how this all played out? The prison sentences, the media attention, the permanent family estrangement. I considered the question while signing for my delivery. 8 months ago, I'd been invisible, a widow with no money, no home, and no prospects. Today, I was a millionaire philanthropist with a foundation, a documentary deal, and a purpose that extended far beyond my own survival. Amanda, my daughter, tried to steal everything I owned and leave me homeless. My son-in-law created forged documents and threatened me with blackmail. They showed me exactly who they were when they thought I was powerless to stop them. But they're still family. No, they're still DNA. Family are the people who protect you when you're vulnerable, not the people who exploit your vulnerability for profit. Amanda closed her portfolio, satisfied with my response. Besides, I added, look what I became when I stopped allowing them to define my worth. After Amanda left, I walked through my house, really my house now, decorated according to my taste, organized around my priorities. In the art studio, I uncovered my latest painting, a self-portrait of a woman standing in bright sunlight, her face turned toward the future. The woman in the painting looked nothing like the grieving widow who'd packed her life into 2 suitcases 8 months ago. This woman looked powerful, independent, unafraid. She looked like someone who'd learned that the best revenge isn't getting even, it's becoming everything your enemies never thought you could be. Outside, the sun was setting behind trees I'd planted myself, in soil that belonged to me, on property I'd defended through intelligence and courage rather than inherited through marriage or birth. Tomorrow I'd continue building the life I'd chosen rather than the life others had planned for me. And if Sarah wanted to rebuild a relationship with this woman, she'd better bring a lot more than prison letters and hollow apologies. She'd better bring a complete transformation, one that matched my own. Sometimes the people who hurt us the most do us the greatest favor. They force us to discover who we really are when everything is stripped away. Sarah thought she was destroying me when she threw me out of my own house. Instead, she set me free to become the woman I was always meant to be. If you've enjoyed this story, consider subscribing and remember, it's never too late to take control of your own narrative. Your voice matters, and your story deserves to be heard.